So good. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Drouin. I'm the moderator of this panel and manager of a band called Metric. We have this is the managers movement. So we're talking about what it is to be a manager in today's music industry, and primarily what the difference is between the role of a manager in the traditional music industry paradigm and what it means today in terms of, two major things is the advent, obviously, of new technology and what it means to now have to manage direct-to-fan relationships. And then also on the other side of things, in the wake of the traditional music industry establishment, the labels and the publishers going through some difficult changes, there's a lot less opportunity than there used to be for managers. So for artists in those channels. So we as managers find ourselves sometimes having to do that job or to navigate that situation. So that's a lot about what we're here to talk about today. We have an illustrious group of managers here. I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Lighty, Violator Management. That's my intro.
Well, yeah, I was just going to go down.
I'm Doc McGhee of McGhee Entertainment.
I'm Pournouri of At Night Management.
Alan Kovac, 10th Street Entertainment.
Dan Kruchkow from Crush Management.
So, listen, we could go through a lot of different aspects in having this discussion. I think the interesting thing about all the people on this panel is that we're all, as managers, dealing with the changing music industry and responding to it in different ways according to the artists that we work with. Ash, you manage Avicii, which is sort of, in the exploding electronic scene, an overnight success in a lot of respects, although I think a lot of time an overnight success is a long time coming. And you've built that career with him as a partner since he was 19 years old, almost completely outside of the traditional establishment. Can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory, and in particular how you did or didn't work with labels?
Well, we started out with a label deal with some people that we knew, but we figured that a long-term deal needed a long-term plan from the label as well, and it didn't really work out. They didn't really see our vision, and eventually we just tried to get out of the deal. We got out, and since then we haven't really made any big deals with any major labels or indies longer than just one single, and we're still doing that today.
And how did you end up getting the traction then? I mean, you've got an artist who exploded around the world. The original label that you were with, who were friends, not much happened there, right? So when you made that decision that you were going to get out of that deal, where did you go from there?
I mean, it's a long story of how we got here, but I don't know how to put it into a short story. But we had a strategy for every leg that we did business in. So we had a strategy for performances, we had a strategy for music, and we had a strategy for profile, and they were all correlated and they all worked together, but we had separate strategies for each of those legs.
And did a lot of that have to do, the strategy itself, did it have to do with managing and leveraging direct-to-fan relationships, or how did you ultimately get the traction to see things start to build?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think as a manager today, my idea of a manager, seeing as I didn't really have a background when I started working with Tim, I think is very ambitious compared to what I've seen in the industry today. When it comes to electronic managers in particular, I don't know what the standard or the norm has been, but for me it was always, managing not only the career aspects of an artist, but also managing personal expectations. It was managing my artist as an individual growing into this big role as an artist, and there's a lot of challenges that came with that, but essentially it's about it's about doing whatever you can in a 360 aspect, including how to talk to fans, how to appear, how to make sure your profile is consistent with whatever brand you're building, because essentially that's what it's about. We're building brands in our artists.
So, Alan, you've been doing this a long time, obviously, seen a whole bunch of different permutations of the music industry. And we've talked a couple of times about the similarities between the way we're both doing business and trying to develop careers for our artists. One of the biggest challenges I found in working with Metric when we decided we were going to dismantle all their traditional industry relationships and start doing it on our own, and coming to the realization that quite likely we weren't going to have access to, we'd never been a radio band, and the likelihood of being able to get on commercial radio in America in particular without a label behind us of any kind was an unlikely eventuality, although it did eventually come to pass. And then also, traditional retail, the Walmarts and Best Buys of the world, where they're selling 50% or more of all physical product, which is still a significant share of the business. Without working with a label and therefore a major distributor, it's going to be almost impossible to get into there. So we decided we'd focus on those direct-to-fan relationships and using that small pool of fans that we had to give them both the tools and the incentive to do the marketing for us, believing that quality is hyper efficient in a highly network affected environment. So if we believe in the art and you have a fan base and you empower them, that they will help you to build that career. But that's a really slow process, in particular at the beginning. So if you're not working with labels and publishers and you don't want to rely exclusively basically on organic online word of mouth, do you find yourself having to find ways to gain exposure for the artist that you're basically a self-contained unit for? And what have you found to be the most effective ways to do that?
The most effective way is to have a smart artist. An artist who doesn't engage their fans is dead on arrival. And you have to, as a manager, make that decision. Do you have an artist that wants to engage Twitter, Facebook, understands that bands like Phish and the Grateful Dead controlled their content, controlled their message, they added value. They had fan mail and fan lists, and they would do it in a real archaic way, but it's the foundation of what everyone's doing now. And you can have an artist who's had success, they've been trained on the major label plantation, and they want to have a radio hit, but they don't have a fan base. And they want to succeed in touring, but promoters have been consolidated for the most part, and they don't sit down and develop acts regionally. Some do, but the amount of people that were out there developing the great artists aren't there anymore. And the volume of fan, live, merchandise, ticket sales, CD or album sales, it's all about today what I call the trophy generation. All the kids that my kids grew up with, my daughter just graduated high school, so I got to watch it. They all got trophies whether they won or they didn't. That's what the record business is. It's, hey, you're all going to get a trophy. We'll give you some money. We now own you. And you don't have to do much. I think now that they have so much debt, they ask them to do something. But the hook is you're going to break from a major label. And we're going to spend the money, and we have the muscle. And my position's always been, there's only 6 hits for a format in a given year. If you go to any program director and you ask them, how many real hits were there? There's like 6 monster go-tos. If you have one, no one's going to stop it. Your mother, your grandmother could get the radio station to play it. They need hits. That's how they get advertising. Everything else is just clutter, and that's what the label is good at doing. They can get the clutter up the chart, but that doesn't do anything except put the artist in debt and take the time of the label. But given the position of a label, they need to do that to get artists, managers, to get on the plantation. It makes no sense for the radio station. Their ratings don't go up, they go down. There's only 12 rock stations in the top 25 market today because they did that. You go to alternative, where there was competition in LA, 98.7 and K-Rock, all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, 13 of the top 15 acts weren't around 36 months ago. That's awesome. It was competition that created that. There's not a lot of competition with radio anymore. They work together. So as managers, smart artists realizing that the old system doesn't work and that you can control it with great content. It's that simple.
It's funny, there's a lot of good things in there that on some level I'd like to respond to, but I think what comes to mind for me also, so looking at what we were able to do with Metric, and we eventually did get on the radio, I actually have a question for you. So are you saying, in your opinion, as a manager working with a great artist that has a hit, you believe even functioning outside of the traditional music industry establishment, that is a place you would start, and you believe you can go into a radio station without a national radio promo team or even an in-house radio person, and that if the content is there, if the music is great and it fits the format, you think you can get on the radio and succeed that way?
We've only had 1 or 2 radio people in the 5 years I've had a record company. And last year we were the #1 rock radio company, whatever that means. It's about great songs, but it's a lot easier when you have an artist who has 3 million Facebook fans and he mobilizes or she mobilizes those people, and you can show the programmer that you have a popular band. You know, they're really just pop guys, whether they're the alternative guy or the rock guy. They started as pop guys that are running these things. So in essence, best advice I could give anybody is get a big fan base, make sure that when you put it on iTunes, when you have a bunch of Facebook fans or Twitter fans, that it's selling. Don't even go to the radio station until it sells. That's the big mistake labels make. If you go to the chart and look at any of the alternative or rock bands, look how many aren't selling but are sitting in the top 15. Why? That's a good question. It's inefficient for the radio station, inefficient for the label, terrible for the manager and artist. But we're hooked on a chart, and the chart isn't connected to sales. So the emotional response of putting money down because you love that song is a disconnect. It's all, quote, research. And many times the song doesn't even research. It's old boys' network of relationships that gets in the way of great artists.
So, Doc, I saw you through that nodding your head quite a bit, and you obviously, out of all of us, you and Alan have probably seen the most iterations of the music industry. You know, if I'm not mistaken, you helped guide artists like Bon Jovi and Motley Crue from the very beginning to, you know, the apex of their career. You continue to work with artists like Kiss and Gene Simmons. Do you agree with a lot of what Alan is saying, and how do you view what's going on today? What is the changing role of a manager today versus what it was 10 or 20 years ago?
I guess the changing role is that we have to do it all. Okay, we used to have partners, and we used to have partners around the world that we could rely on to get our acts, and all we had to do is actually manage the camp. And besides our personal management with the artists, we had this team of people around the world. Well, we don't have that anymore. The closest thing we have is we have people on the internet and that we can work with. But truly, almost every aspect, because of the consolidation of the business, okay, there's only so much bandwidth that these people have. So if you're not one of Chris's bands or one of mine or somebody like that, then you're so far down on the totem pole that you're in the witness protection program. You know, you just sit there and rot. And so it's up to you to have to go out there and do. I mean, I loved the days when we had the record labels that threw money at you and flew you around in private jets and took you everywhere. And they were making a lot of money. Somehow that isn't happening now. They've consolidated it down to they have 2 or 3 bands that make money and the rest of them never see the light of day. So, you know, for all of us here, we've all had to take it upon ourselves to say, this is broken. And the only way that we can do it, if I'm going to fail, let me fail on my own.
It's amazing that you said that because, you know, with Metric, I'm not a music guy first and foremost. I come from the technology space. I I sold the company when I was pretty young, went sailing around the world trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life, and then ended up wandering into music. And I became really close with this band Metric, and I believed in them, and they were in a very difficult situation with a network of independent labels. They they recorded 3 records. One of them hadn't come out. It was a terrible situation. And we sort of had this conversation, and I'm not opposed to the idea. Like you said, the record business and the music industry used to make a lot of money, and there's a variety of reasons, many of them of their own doing, some completely outside of their control, which result in this situation where they can't afford to do things the way that they used to before. I'm curious what everybody here thinks about 360 deals. Personally, I think in principle the idea that a label who's going to make an investment in the record side of things, which is the most financially risky side of an artist's career, but that really generally is the driver of building that artist's brand, so to speak, potentially they do deserve the opportunity to participate in some other revenue center, but it can't be a land grab. There has to be some demonstrated value. You can't say, hey, listen, I have half the staff I used to have 2 years ago. I'm going to give you half the money, but I want a share of all these different revenue centers. So for us with Metric, we sat and had this conversation and said, look, you can sign with an indie or you can sign with a major. They had a deal on the table from Interscope at the time. They'd been with the indies, they didn't like it. Or I said jokingly, you can do it yourself. And the guitar player came back and he said, listen, could we really do it? Because I'd like to try. I realize that the odds are against us, but the fact is I'd rather try and fail and go down in flames on my own terms than sign this deal with Interscope, which I'm pretty certain is going to end badly for me. And it was born out of necessity, really, the obligation to go and set up all these record companies around the world. And we were lucky to do that. And Dan, I'd really like to talk to you in a second about, Dan runs marketing and digital strategy at Crush, one of the most forward-thinking management companies out there. And I know that you have been very effective in terms of building followings for fans outside, ultimately breaking your artists at radio and the traditional mainstream channels. But you guys have been effective at building that first and foremost online in a lot of capacities. And I'd like to ask you how you did that. But before, Chris, I'd just like to direct one question at you. One of the things we realized with Metric, self-financing everything, and when we're making money in one territory, we automatically, because there is no label, there is no bank, we have to pour money into other territories because there's no tour support, there's no marketing money. If we want to build this into a global project and we're self-financing, there's not a lot of money coming out of the traditional revenue centers. So we've been very careful about finding ways to take this brand that we've been able to build, and I hate that word, but that's really what it is. It's an artist brand, and monetize it in non-traditional ways. I think that your artist, 50 Cent in particular, whether we're talking about Vitamin Water or any of the other deals that he's done, I'm taking this from an outsider's perspective, but I would imagine you and he have made more money from some of those non-traditional deals than from the music industry outright, and that has actually helped grow his career. Can you talk to us a little bit about that process and how you came to that realization?
Yes, but before we go to that, I want to answer your 360 question, because I feel like at one point or another, I've watched what I've coined as the big three, and not Bosch, LeBron, and Wade, but Puffy, 50, and Jay-Z navigate the business in a way that they've used the record companies as partners, but they didn't get to share in the spoils. Now, there'll never be another big three. There'll never be another Puffy, 50, or Jay-Z. Not without a 360, because obviously everyone's watched us rape and pillage and build other businesses that Jimmy doesn't have. Jimmy will tell you we inspired him to go figure out beats because we were selling sneakers and tripping over the checks, selling sneakers and clothing and water and touring. And I believe as a manager, all of my acts, new baby acts, will have to be in a 360 if they have any hope of having any success of me pulling out the money out of the bank, i.e. the record company, or because self-financing in the world, unless you're already 50, Puffy, Jay, and those guys aren't self-financing their records. As long as you're fine with a certain level of success and you know you're going to build the touring into something else, you're not going to cut through the clutter. There's 100 gajillion kids putting out records every day on the internet. how do you cut through the clutter without a partner?
I would agree with you, but that's what I was saying before. I'm not opposed to the idea that a label or a publisher deserves to participate in other revenue centers, and at some point, if you want to take it to the next level, you need partners and you need investment. But if you go out of the box to those people with nothing but a good song, you risk doing a deal where they'll make you successful and you won't really own anything or make much money off it. Maybe then you can go.
That's if you do a shitty 360 deal. I didn't say take the 360 deal that they're going to offer you, but a perfect example is somebody that I hope he'll be here 20 years from now, but I have a lot of faith that he'll be here, is Diggy Simmons. I believe he's the next LL Cool J, and I've had the privilege to work with LL for 20 years. Diggy, if we sell 100,000 records this go around on this album, I'll be popping bottles, popping Cristal. Now, we'll sell 500,000 plus singles and everything else. We'll sell 100,000 albums. I'll be popping Cristal. But his celebrity is bigger than his record-buying audience, because his record-buying audience hasn't learned to buy records yet. They've learned to steal records. Let's call it exactly what it is. But Diggy will go and make this year, $3-4 million on touring. It's not bad for a 16-year-old. Already halfway there. So by building that base, I feel like Atlantic should partake in a piece of his touring, because if I didn't have that base, I don't necessarily know if I could have built him into touring and seeing those little girls that absolutely will pay 15, 20, 30 bucks to see him, but will steal his record immediately as soon as it comes out.
I agree, and in a world where we're coming into, I, for the most part, look at recorded music almost as like a calling card. The less friction that you apply to it, the more ironically, the more we give things away or let it be stolen, the more it ends up selling. I've noticed a direct correlation. You can argue the chicken or the egg associated with that, but I don't disagree with you at all. I think all I was saying was that you might want to employ, if you believe in the talent, you might want to start a certain level of career development on your own outside of the traditional industry infrastructure before trying to go do one of those deals, because you're going to get, pardon my French, but your ass handed to you.
Oh, no,
if you
absolutely.
go in cold.
But everyone that's in here that wants to get signed should absolutely take it upon themselves to build their own audience. They should put a record out and build an audience, and hopefully I'll see it, Doc will see it, someone in our office will see it, or our kids will come up to us and say, hey, stupid, go look at this person, because my daughter tells me every day, hey, go look at that, go look at this. But the actual cutting through the clutter, the being able to do the 50-cent vitamin water deal, or right now we're building Street King, SK, you're in the, I'm chasing a business that's totally outside of music, but I learned from a very smart guy that told me always have partners. He's a billionaire guy, made a lot of money. He said, don't do it on your own, always have partners. Why take the risk by yourself? So every artist, every manager should think that through, like, okay, it's great to say, if we take the risk and spend $5 million, we're gonna make $50 million.
I agree with you.
Great.
Totally.
But if you spend the $5 million and you go on one knee, you got to throw some more money at it, because now you've spent all of the $5 million, you got to throw more money at it. I had this conversation literally yesterday with a client.
When I was 6,
and I was like, you're going to spend the $5 million. I got the partner that's going to spend the $6, $7, $8 million every year, guaranteed. If we go on one knee, we're going to go in the pocket. Now, I know I'm scared to death.
It's relative, though. It's relative.
It's not relative if it's your money.
no, I mean, look, there's no,
It's no longer.
no, it's
I don't
his
care
money.
if it's.
There's no question.
I
The
don't
leverage
care if
effect-
it's Interscope's money, or it's Warner Music Group's money. I care, but I don't care.
No, but Chris, you're right. If you take $100 of your own money and you make $110 with it, you made a 10% return. If you take $100 of somebody else's money, make $110 with it, but you got to split it, you only get $5, but your return is infinite. There's no question. That's the leverage effect. I mean,
So that's why.
But does that make sense when you could basically have done it yourself if the song's real.
It's a question
you
of
don't
timing.
need $5 million. My whole point is,
No. Not for the music, for an outside brand extension. Because you're never going to get rich. But by the way, anybody is a rapper out there, music, no one's selling 10 million records ever again. 50 Cent was the last guy. He sold 13 million on Get Rich or Die Trying. No one's doing it again until Google or someone says, we're going to lock it so that no one can steal the music. Until we figure that out, no one's selling that kind of record ever again.
well, why does Adele sell 20 million
Because
around
she's
the
an
world?
old lady singing to old, because my mother buys her record.
Right.
And my daughter. There's no, Diggy Simmons will never sell 10 million records at one time. But
I'm not saying that he
he'll-
would. I asked why for a
Because
reason.
she's an old lady.
Right.
And let's see if she does it again twice.
So demographically, she hit a note with all
With a
those
song.
people.
With a song.
Right.
And then we all know once we have a song, I got in the club, you gonna rock with PIMP and everything else I throw at you because
All right,
the
so-
momentum
all right, so I got
is
a
so
question.
big.
Okay, go
I got
ahead.
a question.
How many Adeles that came out
There aren't that
with
many.
great records that we didn't acknowledge because we didn't think she was a hot enough old lady?
Look,
and
one
I
of-
shouldn't
one of
say
the things,
old lady,
Chris,
but
Look,
she's old. She's no. She's
She sings-
old.
she
Her
sells to old
songs are
people.
old. Her songs are old, not her physical. Her songs are old.
Listen,
Anyone say her songs aren't old?
Chris.
They're soul. They're very soulful, old. I don't. Next year, my daughter's not going to remember Adele if she doesn't put out a hot record. She won't.
Most of these people aren't looking to be Adele. I was giving an example of something that resonated with a demo.
I'm going to have to move this on shortly.
Somebody tell me who was hot last year, besides Adele. Oh no. Oh wait. Better yet, who's the guys that beat 50 Cent for the best new artist? No, on 2003, there was
That
an
indie
act
guy.
that beat. There was an independent act that beat 50 Cent for the Grammy for the best new artist. We haven't heard from them since. It's too hard out here.
Look, I agree with you, and I think one of the things that's inevitable is to acknowledge that in times of change, there's opportunity, and with so much going on right now, there's not just one way to do things. There's different approaches for different types of artists, different genres, and in my humble opinion, anybody who tells you they know exactly what the answer is right now is either a liar or an idiot. There's no...
More an idiot.
More an idiot, perhaps, probably. Alan, what was your question before we sort of move on?
My point was going to be, it's all relative. 10 million is something that happened regularly when I managed the Cranberries or Meatloaf or Duran or whomever, right? Yeah, that was regular.
Because we couldn't steal music then.
Right,
Chris,
let me go ahead and get this out because I think you're going to agree with me. The point I'm trying to make is most of these people want to get their careers going. And my point is really simple. Dirty Heads didn't exist 24 months ago. Metric existed because of his ability to say, I know technology, I'm a business guy, I don't know anything about the music business, but I know I can make money doing this, and I'll manage it properly, and I'll build a career. Both those bands tour, make a lot of money touring, sell merchandise, and they have a real business. So when we jump all the way to 10 million, I agree with you. But on a relative...
1 million.
1 million.
I'll take 1 million nowadays on an act worldwide.
The point is, record sales aren't an indicator of an artist's notoriety at this stage in life.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And most of the money's not coming from the records anyway. So,
Right, because like I said, I'll be happy if Diggy sells 100,000 because his notoriety and his celebrity is much bigger than his record sales, so stating because obviously we could tour him and he could get 30,
So why
50,
would you make a 360 deal?
60,000. Because he wouldn't have been able to get that.
Well, he was able to do it. I was able to do it.
I mean, look, we were offered 360-degree deals, Chris, where they were saying, I'll give you $75,000, I want a piece of everything, and I want 7 records. I didn't try to do it on my own indefinitely. I got it to 150,000 albums scanned in America, and then I made a one-album deal with a partner who put up 7 figures worth of advances in marketing and basically gave us the ability to control the budget with them, and there's no future unless they perform, and even then we have an out. So I was able to give them nothing but records, get serious money, and now I'm focusing on building the UK, and they're taking care of America. And so do we need partners? Absolutely. But, you know, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you talk about a 360 deal, do you envision, you know, records, publishing, merchandise, and touring, or are you also looking at brand partnerships and things that you're able to build on the back of that? Because it strikes me that your model, a lot of it is derived from those brand partnerships and the things that that's where you're extracting a lot of value for your artists. So doing the 360, if it gets you the money to build the brand and you're giving up a whole lot of the upside, if you're making most of your upside over on the left here, it doesn't matter as much. But not, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, my opinion is that it's a lot easier to do this sometimes with urban artists than with different ilk of artists where you're building all these brands on the back. So I don't know that that approach works for everybody, is all I'm saying.
You know, we had an AT&T commercial for Diggy before his record came out because we had, obviously, all of us here have a big enough net that those opportunities come into our office and we could say, oh, it could go here or there. And Atlantic didn't share in that. But I don't know the kind of 360s that people are seeing. But, you know, if I bring my client $100,000 for a commercial and Atlantic gets $5,000, I'm not going to...
No, you're not going to freak out.
I'm not going to freak out. I mean, if they were asking for $50,000, I would say, jump in the lake.
No,
the freak out is when they're still. Do you think Def Leppard would be on the road if their manager, business manager, lawyer, record company?
But it shouldn't. It can't be Def Leppard or Jay-Z or the. It's got to be.
No, but the new guy. What I'm saying is
they
wouldn't have made it to being in their 40s and 50s and still earning a living because they don't sell records anymore. The net is so low on touring that when you get all those people taking the income stream, 5 guys in a band aren't going to go out on the road.
We really have some ground to cover, so we have to move on beyond this topic. But I think the lesson to what I'm taking away from this, Chris. What I'm taking away from this at the end of the day, when I was trying to say and what I think we're all basically agreeing is if you're going to put up the money to build an artist career and you're a record company and you want them to do anything, they deserve to have participation in revenue centers that can actually make money, but they have to deliver some value. And if you go in without any leverage, without any relationships built with fans, without any traction, they're not just going to benevolently give you a deal that's fair that allows you to make money in the long term. So how do you get,
they're not going to sign you because they don't even know.
That's not true, man. I've gotten 7-figure deals for an artist that's never put out a record or even an EP and a one-album, $1 million publishing. You can build those guys.
After 2010?
No, in 2009.
2010 is the benchmark of our business is fucked.
Well,
well, one thing is, us guys up here, we have a 360 deal. We are 360. Okay, so we bitch and moan, but we are 360 in everything they do. So in order to give pieces away, I'm with you on that if they do something. Like you say, somebody comes up and wants to do a vitamin water, and you go, well, I can do that myself. No, you can't.
Man,
okay? I'm going to do a shoe. No, you can't. You know, you got to get a Nike or you got to get somebody to come. But for somebody to come up and say, I might put your record out.
Might, because there's never a guarantee. Very rarely.
I might put your record out. And there's no expectations of what that has to do. But for maybe putting it out, and for a little bit of money, I want 20%, 25% of anything that you make the rest of your life. That's kind of a bad deal.
Agreed, exactly. You're better to try and build it on your own until you have some.
But when you have a new artist and you say to the record company, well, I don't think that's fair, they go, next. Excuse me, can we get security and get them out of the office? Because they're not signing you unless they get these deals.
I think that is very true generally across the board. However,
yeah,
and it's a good segue to the question I wanted to ask you, Dan.
You build Train or whatever up, what do you got? You build your artists up, then people come to the table, and it's a different story. But when you come in there with a CD that you spent 12 grand on making, and you think it's the next Sgt. Pepper's, they don't care. You know,
No, you have
really
to have
well.
some sort of traction. Otherwise, they're right because they're taking a blank slate and they're going to put up all the money. So I think this is a fascinating conversation, but I want to bring it back to the point of view of an artist or a manager in the room who's trying to figure out where do I go from here because the record business seems pretty fucked and I don't want to sign a draconian deal with a major label and all I have is a $12,000 EP, but I think it's pretty good and I don't want to do it all on my own forever either because I want to be an artist, not a manager and everything else, but how do you get started? Where do you go and what do you expect your manager to do for you? And for me, I really believe that we're in the middle of a transition here. I think radio is still the biggest driver of music discovery and consumption on the planet. I also think it's in decline with listenership and with relevance in terms of moving people to buy music. And I really personally believe in the social discovery of music online being one of the next biggest drivers. And in that context, if you accept the premise that quality content is hyper efficient in a highly network affected environment, and you look at, you know, platforms like Facebook beginning to integrate with Spotify and building, like literally systemizing the tools that we deployed with Metric in a MacGyver duct tape kind of way, I believe you have the ability to scale it to a 50-cent level. If it ever happens again, probably not. At some point, you're going to need partners. But in order to bring on those partners and not get your ass handed to you in the deal, you need to get to a certain level. So Dan, you're heading up one of the most forward-thinking management companies in this space. You're the head of digital. You have a team of 10 people helping you to do that. When you sign an artist as a manager who has something that you believe is really great and you don't have the leverage to do a deal on your own yet, assuming you don't want to put it out yourself, for example, where do you start? Like, how are you approaching that early phase of career development so you can have some leverage?
Well, look, first, we have to make sure we have a great artist. If we have a great artist, we make a great record with this guy or this girl or this group, whatever it may be. It all starts with amazing music. It's not about one song. It's about someone who could last for 25 years and let the music lead. You know, pardon my French, but people's bullshit detectors these days are so high. I mean, they can spot a fake from miles away. Mm-hmm. You can't have fakes. Fakes are bad.
Agreed.
There used to be a lot of fakes.
Hold the microphone.
So primarily, you got to have great songs, an amazing, talented artist. Once you have that, then you start identifying, you know, the music that the fans are gravitating towards. I mean, it's funny, everyone talks about radio research and all these crazy things to determine what's hot. I mean, look at iTunes. Put in a record up on iTunes, which song sells the most? That's probably the best song on the album. It's really easy. That said, you need people to hear this thing first before anything's going to sell. It's not just going to sell magically. There's, you know, countless albums being released every year. Tens of thousands, a couple 100,000, who knows what it is, depending which stats you read. But you got to cut through the clutter. So I've seen this from both sides. I worked at Island Def Jam for a really long time, over a decade. You know, I saw Rick Ross come in with this song "Hustlin'" that was like the hottest thing on the street, and I sold 1 million ringtones before the guy's record ever came out. He got a plaque before his record was in stores. It was an incredible thing. Those guys built that. You know, they built that song up and did something. I also was able to work with a band called Fall Out Boy from the very early days, over 10 years ago. At the time, the label had done a first right deal to sign it from the indie label. And I was sort of assigned to work this record, so we would want to pick up that option. You know, it wouldn't just be this hope and a dream. And you know, we were able to, you know, with just a couple of us, we were able to turn this thing from, you know, something that seemed really cool to something that was real big. I mean, you know, you want to talk some numbers. I think we had 1,000 people on an email list when we did this deal. And the day their record came out, their first major label record came out, we had 85,000 emails. I still couldn't get anyone to believe, except the managers, who happen to be the guys at Crush, where I work now, to believe that there was something there. I'm like, we're going to sell a lot of records the first week. Like, we've built this for like 3 years now. And sure enough, we sold like 80,000 albums the first week, no radio play, no video play.
Direct to fan almost.
Direct to fan, 100%.
And you did that outside, that whole career development process was outside of the establishment, the established channels, right?
It's an interesting case because, yeah, I was in the establishment, but I was sort of this black ops thing off to the side. working with the managers.
And was the artist controlling their social network? I mean, I know they did a lot of that from word-of-mouth touring, but it was an online phenomenon. I mean, a lot of the Fueled by Ramen stuff was followed by Fueled by Ramen?
They were on Decadence, and then through Fueled by Ramen.
So
yeah.
a lot of those acts, though, but, you know, John, you know, whether it was Panic at the Disco or Fueled by Ramen, they built these sort of substantial careers outside of radio at first, even though they were radio-driven bands, and ultimately outside of the establishment. Did you do that digitally, or was it outside of the digital space? And if you did it digitally, I guess my question for you is, as a management company, how much emphasis are you putting on social networks and online word of mouth to build an artist's career in the beginning? And if you're doing it that way, are you controlling it or are they controlling it? And do you think one approach is better than the other?
All right, so a lot to go through here. And let me just back up for one quick second to put it all in context. So Fall Out Boy did it. They got big. They did their thing. I realized that I should do this with these guys at Crush because they sort of saw the future and built their whole company on the notion that, you know, the internet would change things forever. You know, they didn't start the company last year. It was 10, 15 years ago. And so what I did was I went there and there was no one. It was just me in a room and a bunch of managers. Now we have 10 people, call it marketing, right? We do a lot of different things. So we've built this team. I have 3 different people doing digital marketing. I have a radio person. I have someone who does TV, film, and video game licensing. Someone who works with brands. Someone who does nothing but all day creates content for the internet. Photos, videos, you name it. We've actually just done a deal with these guys speaking in the other room called Maker to help fund all of our content so we don't have to spend a dime on it or ask for permission. We can just go do it. And it's a pretty great team, and you know, we've done things like Chitty Bang's a great example. They were a band with a hot song on a mixtape 2 or 3 years ago, and we saw this group. They came out of Drexel. They were really nothing, but blogs were onto them. They sort of spotted it, and fast forward about a year and a half, we have a gold single without being on the radio, without really having virtually any airplay. That got everyone excited, clearly. And now we're able to take it to the next level, and you know, we're on the radio, and we're doing things, and we're touring, and we're really building a brand there, one brick at a time. It's not an overnight success at all, but you know, we used our team and not a lot of money to grow this thing. I mean, it's really interesting. I was looking at their video numbers the other day. They have more plays on their own YouTube channel than on their Vivo channel, which is not to take away from Vivo because it's a fantastic platform, but it shows how much time and effort we put into YouTube over a 2-3 year period to really just like crank out content that was great, that fans loved, and just build that thing.
And I think that's a fundamentally important thing to realize, in my opinion, is having control over the direct-to-fan relationship, not letting any entity stand between you and the fans, even as applies to putting content on your own platforms and your own channel as opposed to through third parties who might be able to originally drive more traffic to it. Owning that relationship, to me, has proved to be one of the most effective tools out there, because when we want to do something, we can mobilize that fan base, and they help us achieve what we're trying to achieve.
The other differentiation that Crush has is you've built a community. You have a brand, and you cross-market. So
right, Fall Out Boy was a platform.
Right.
Just like Rick Ross is a platform with Maybach, or 50 Cent was a platform with G-Unit. Like, you know, you have a platform like that, and you bring in like-minded artists. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's like the Hacienda back in Manchester.
Right,
You know?
and that's what we did with Motley Crue, Buck Cherry, Papa Roach. But we can't put them, you know, when Motown puts out Crash Kings, it's not exactly co-branding well. And that's what the consolidation's done. You know, in the old days, you knew what the label stood for, and the label had a constituency.
Right, and that's a great band that had #1 modern rock record.
Yeah.
But it sort of was on its own, you know, and it didn't...
No support that you give, or no build of fan base.
So we've got less than 15 minutes left, so I want to try and cover a little bit more ground. At the risk of having this commandeer the entire rest of the panel, Chris, I have a question for you about the monetization side of things, which is, Do you think 50 Cent and some of the artists that you're working with, whether it's on an artist-by-artist or a genre-based approach, are they anomalies, or do you see this as something that can be replicated as a, a scalable model for other managers and other artists, both inside and outside of urban music?
I don't think they're anomalies. I think that there's always going to be the next Puffy, next 50, next Jay-Z. It's just on what scale. And I think there's just so many outlets now that we have to find acts and for acts to find their audience. At the risk of having everyone run after, there's an act that I'm looking at to sign right now called After the Smoke. Found them on Tumblr. Their design, their fashion forwardness, their videos, everything that they did made my office go, hey, this is the next Tribe Called Quest or the next Outkast. So I feel like there's definitely ways for artists and managers to build their base out there. They didn't just have to figure out who's going to be the right partner for their brand.
Well,
I was going to ask you to tell a story,
and everything else is part of the puzzle, big part of the puzzle. But to me, us up here and all of the managers, all we are handicappers. Okay, we go to the racetrack, we look at the horse, we watch the nose, we look on to see where the trainer was, who did this, who did that, and then we see if there's a connection. And that's the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad, is the connection that people have with an artist. I've gone to 150 showcases in the last 10 years, and they go, oh, listen to this song. I go, well, fucking nobody's listening. Well, wait till you hear this next one. What do I care? I don't care if you sing Let It Be. Nobody likes this kid, okay? So you can't be a music snob. If you're out there and you want to be in the music business, look for connection. See somebody that has 50 kids standing there going crazy, and next time 75, 100 kids going crazy. And that, when I signed Motley Crue, okay, I couldn't even understand what they were playing. But I saw 3,000 kids going apeshit. So I get it. I'm not a music snob. I'm in the music business.
Doc, they worked real hard to get those 3,000 people. And that's
Absolutely.
what I'm saying by a smart artist.
Yeah.
They went out and they put posters up so high you couldn't take them down, right?
But that's not what we can do for people. Whenever we think that we can do that, we can control what they're doing, and we can hold the reins, and we can ride them, okay? And we can tell them, no, you got to turn left here. But they got to be able to run. You can't teach somebody to be a star. Right. You can't do it. They either are or they're not.
I agree. You either have it or you don't on some fundamental level, but I think, and Chris, tell me if you would agree, even if you either have it or you don't, and you're right, we bet on people that we think have it and try to help them connect. But even some who do, to be able to do the type of deals that you're doing in a lot of ways, you need to be able to scale it to a pretty high level before those doors open up. And so I understand your approach of saying, look, at the end of the day, I'd rather give up a big piece of the pie to get the money and the resources to scale it up so I can do it.
I didn't say a big piece of pie. I just said a piece.
Gotcha.
Part
of my misinterpretation.
Yeah, we have, trained, who would have thought the biggest song of 2010 would have a ukulele in it, right? And, we've started to create this culture of San Francisco around the band. Well, I should say the band has done that. One of the things they did, they started a wine company. It's actually really, really good wine. It's won awards. It's been highly rated. And we've sold more wine than a lot of bands have sold CDs in the last year. If you think I'm sitting in our office stepping on grapes and, trying to figure out how to make wine and sell it to restaurants, that's not happening. You need partners, man. You need people who know what's going on.
Ash, you haven't said very much, but I'm curious, Avicii to me is a very interesting phenomenon because of how quickly and how big it's become. And that whole scene as well, which is largely existing it was born, God knows how quickly out of where, but outside of the traditional establishment. I mean, how many people had never heard of Electric Daisy and things like that? But bigger than Coachella in terms of attendance in some respects. What is your perspective on all of this, and in particular the brand side of things? I mean, have you guys done any of those kinds of deals? Are you interested in them, not interested in them?
The thing is, the reason I haven't been saying much is because I feel our industry is so much different from the other people on this panel. when it comes to stardom, I'm not really sure that it cannot be taught to my industry. To be honest, I don't feel that a lot of big artists in my genre are stars. It's just like they're stars in their productions, but as artists, they're not really the same caliber as a lot of the other people that you guys represent up here. I think when it comes to the question of 360 deals and making money, what's interesting, one thing that's super interesting that I feel that a lot of people don't know is that Universal Sweden last year had their best year ever when it came to revenue.
Spotify.
It's because of Spotify. It's a simple fact. I mean, it works. You know, I mean, people don't want to pay for music, but they do anyway.
Amen.
So, you know, there are creative ways where the record industry can still make money today. It's just that the 360 deal, to me, has always been the easy way out. It's like, okay, fuck, we're not selling any more CDs. We're not selling any more
My
downloads.
business sucks, so I want a piece of yours.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're not really being creative. You're not really going and thinking, what is the future here? How do we make our business different to make sure that we can create revenue where there is nothing today? I think that's their biggest challenge, and Spotify is basically giving it to them in their lap. I mean, not to say that Spotify will be the biggest service in the world. I think there's just a matter of time before iTunes kicks in their corresponding service or whatever. They're probably just waiting for their market share to drop. But either way, I think streaming is part of that future solution to make sure the record label and the record industry kickbacks in. And
I agree in particular because I think that method of consuming music is also fundamentally important to the propagation of what I think will be one of the next biggest drivers of music discovery and consumption, which is social sharing of music and social discovery of music. And those platforms, it's those streaming platforms that offer the integration potential with the social networks to allow that to emerge and to grow.
It's also happening on a scale that's almost unprecedented on YouTube right now. I mean, it may be videos, but it's people listen to videos, you know, and YouTube is the biggest streaming service in the world for music, hands down, and it's there.
They haven't built, and you're right, but they haven't, like, you can't playlist on YouTube without putting a third-party application on top. You can't favorite videos and then organize them in playlists, and that's a whole other long conversation. They've made a decision, I think, which is that's not what they're trying to do, and that are they going to leverage it in the meantime? Yes, but their licenses prevent them from doing that, and they don't want to go down that road, it seems. They're going to go after that space, but I don't think through YouTube. But anyway, sorry, I digress because that's a really hot topic for me, but we're not going to get through it in the next 5 minutes. So I have 3 final questions of my own before we go. 2 questions, and we'll try to answer them quickly because we're running out of time. But, you know, Alan, bottom line, do you think artists can survive without labels as investors today?
Yes. It takes a smart artist. It takes a hard-working artist. Doc and I both worked with Motley Crue. They shouldn't exist. They exist because a guy named Nicky Sixx is a very smart artist, and he has balls. In the mid-'90s...
When you got him.
What's that?
When you got him.
Well, I hired a private investigator that got him a brain. Anyway, the bottom line is he developed into entrepreneurial, smart artist. And when he had a choice of an advance or his masters, he said, I want my masters. And he understood when I explained to him what an asset was and what cash flow was, it was more valuable than the $12 million they were offering him.
Which was what, an interest-free, non-recourse loan against money in the pipeline to say I want to own a piece of everything? That's a bad deal no matter how you slice it.
Right. So now he goes...
Unless you need that money.
So now he's in the decade that we're in. And he comes up to me and he said, you know, Motley, I don't want to go out on the road my whole life. I'm 53. What can I do? Smart guy. What can I do? And I talked to him about a diary he had. I said, make this into a book. And he came back and he didn't really understand how to write. And I said, why don't you do some character development? Let's finish this book and let's see if we can get a deal. And then I said to him, even if we get a deal, you're not Vince or Tommy. it's going to be hard for you to make money. Let's do a soundtrack to a book. No one's ever done that before. And then he put a soundtrack to a book. He gets a #1 single, a bestseller, and he's got a brand called 6 a.m. and the Heroin Diaries. And now we have a radio show called 6 Cents that's on almost 100 radio stations around the United States. He's 5 hours an evening. He's in mornings now in Dallas, and he gets a huge percentage of the revenue, more money than he makes in Motley Crue. That's a killer artist. He learned his craft. He focused. He wasn't that at the beginning, but when you can get one at the beginning like a Madonna, or you can find someone at the beginning like a Prince, that's what you're looking for. And if you're artists out there, go be that. Don't come to the record company for a bunch of money and they're going to make you a star. Learn your craft, work at your fucking craft, and keep your standards up. That's all it is. It's no more, no less.
Thanks, Alan. Doc, over the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of working with you and Gene on developing an artist that hasn't come out yet. And, you know, for sure, Gene and I have different perspectives on a lot of things, but I've developed a lot of respect for his, you know, single-minded vision and determination. His vision, I think, for the future of the music industry is probably a little bit different than mine, but there's nothing to say that he's not right and I'm not wrong. What do you think the music business looks like in 10 years?
Well, I personally think it's the most exciting thing that's happened to us right now. I think in the last couple of years, it's given us all back the opportunity to actually have to go to work. We're all managers up here, okay? And that's just like being a doctor. There's doctors that cure people and there's doctors that kill people, okay? But we're all doctors. So there's managers and there's damagers, okay? So now we have control. The manager is really, well, the manager has control now. They need us. They didn't need us 10 years ago when they were flying out, records were flying out. Now they come to us every day because they're understaffed, they're underpaid, they're overworked, and they need to have a team of people. I've got 26 people that work for me. When I had Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Scorpions, and Skid Row all headlining for 10 years, I had 4 people working for me. I've got 26 people working for me now. It's crazy. But if we don't pick up the slack, they're going to go to somebody else as much as they love us, as they would say. Right. I really love you, Dan, but I got to go. So they'll go someplace else. So it's really, it's changed tremendously, but I do believe that this is the best time for artists to be able to go show their wares. We didn't have internet or anything to do, and now people can see it, and you go to work. You got to be the best. As I tell every one of my artists, if you're the best, they'll come and see the best. If you write the best music, they'll buy your shit, okay? And if you're not, they're going to go buy the ones that are the best.
It's no question, like, in change lies opportunity. Fortune favors the bold. It always gets worse before it gets better. But right now, there's no question in my view that the power, the balance of power is shifting back towards artists. Those artists are relying on managers. So we are in a unique position. It's an exciting time. We have the ability to be among the architects of the reinvention of this business. And fundamentally speaking, the underlying economic potential of any intellectual property-based business, which is what this is, stand to be more compelling in the future than they ever could have been in the past in a bricks-and-mortar world. And so it's just about building that model and figuring out what it is. And I agree with you. It's a very exciting time.
Should we get another 5% for this?
All right, we'll move to some questions. Chris, this one for you. When managing upcoming producers, what's the best way to promote them and get them placements as opposed to an artist per se?
I tell my producers, give away records. And it sounds crazy. Everybody said, give away the record. Give a hit away, you get another hit. You have to get yourself out there and do as many, go to writing sessions, go to studios. Most of the artists that have ever been signed have come into the office wanting to be signed or come to the studio. The same thing with the producer now. Producers are almost as important, if not equally important as an artist, but they have to give their wares away so people know what they're buying into.
By the way, just to reiterate, you guys can text in your questions to 66937. They'll show up on the screen here. There's only, or Dave, I don't know if this should be rotating, or maybe we're just really not very interesting and there's only 4 questions up here, but it's not moving. So I'll pick from these 4. There you go. In this new industry, how does a manager's job differ from a label's marketing team? Doc, you were talking about not having a huge staff when you had the biggest artists, some of the biggest artists on earth, and now having that kind of staff in-house. And you were joking, but you raised a very good point, too. You know, does the manager deserve to get paid more because we're doing...
He wasn't joking.
No, I don't joke about that.
Well, so what is, no, but all seriousness, it's a question I ask myself because I'm doing way more work than a normal manager would, and I'm commissioning, sure, more money because the artist is making more money because there's nobody in between. But the truth of the matter is, the management business, from my perspective, as somebody who started in technology, is a bad business. You don't own much. What you do own is a relationship that you can't sell, and you find yourselves doing all of these things that were traditionally the domain of a label or a publisher, and you're not really getting paid incrementally more in proportion with the amount of work.
I feel pretty shitty about my job right now.
Sometimes I do too, but...
Now listen, we all get paid well. The idea is, a lot of it's laid off to the artists too, because if you're doing marketing and promotion and stuff on people that don't have labels, and then you can do, some creative dealing with it. Listen, our business is fine, mine is, that's for sure. And, it just makes us a stronger company when you can control more of it. You just have to have the income to do it, because you can't have publicity people and 10 marketing people and all that kind of stuff on a band that makes 20 grand a night. You're not unless you want to sleep over the garage, okay? You can forget it. So you have to have big companies, and I think that managers have to reinvest in their business as well, and that's part of it.
But it's scalable.
Yeah,
and when you look at a Beggars Group or a Sub Pop or an Epitaph, and those deals are very low hurdles. We'll give you 10,000. We'll give you 25,000 for a record. But they have a community and they have a work ethic where the artist has self-fulfilling marketing. They know that they can sell 25,000 records within their community. And then it's about the artist continuing to work with them as the marketing dollars happen. And the issue with the majors that I have is, why do you have to scale it so high that the chances of success are 1%? Why not scale it down? And there's the issue. Lawyers still want their house in Beverly Hills, and business managers still want their Park Avenue apartments. They don't do anything.
There's inherent value in the long tail of music, and we've done a really poor job of extracting value there, of monetizing that side of the business, because there is demand for it. And you're right, those companies are really good at it. One of the questions here, which I think is a nice segue, because you refer to companies like Beggars. For indie acts, it's often a great place to start. If you can land on Excel, you're very happy. You're not going to get a lot of money, but they have a certain aesthetic. They can help you build a brand. So if you're starting from the ground up, what is a basic 12-month structural strategy that the panelists would use to launch a new artist from the ground up? Anyone want to take that?
Start with great music. Put it on the internet. Get out on the road, and think.
I say find connection. Get your artist. If you're an artist, find connection. If you find connection, you will find us.
And it's not just the song. I'm signing an artist that I saw in LA. They have 2.7 million YouTube hits. And it's not because they're on a treadmill doing something that everyone's sharing. It's because for $2,000, they made one of the best videos I've ever seen to a great song. And that's quality, that's standards. And if everyone just brings their standards up past, do we have a hit single, to quality of content, the artwork, the website, the video, all of it, that's what makes Prince, and Madonna, and Gaga, who wants to be Madonna. She worked hard to do that.
I think you have to accept that the premise is that you have to start with good music and a great artist. And if that's the case, yeah, throw it out there on the internet, try and build something. But to your point, you know, find a connection. I think that's something we haven't touched upon that's absolutely true. You got to find where you have traction and then nurture that. And actually, you know, we haven't talked about data, but the music industry used to operate in a vacuum of data. You didn't really know what was making things work or why, where things were selling. Now we have access to so much data, and there is so much we can do to leverage that without having to spend a whole bunch of money. So I think that's an important part of the answer. If I'm picking up a new artist, and want to build it from scratch, make sure they have great content, put it on the internet, but then use the data to figure out where you do get that traction and then nurse that and grow that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to tweet and your tweets get one retweet, that's not good. But maybe you key on something and it gets 100 or 1,000, you should keep doing that one. And there's a lot of data out there to show those kinds of things that you can uncover. You might think the one that gets one retweet is the hot one. Probably not. It could be another one. And all that stuff is out there, and it's real easy to see.
And the tools are free for the most part if you find them. Chris, did you want to order which one you want to answer? Oh, look at that. I didn't even see that one. If label gets a 360 deal, taking so much more from artist and management is in essence a 360 commission of what is left for the artist. Hold on. If label gets 360 deal, taking so much I didn't even understand the question, so you want to explain it and answer it?
Okay, I'm going to read the question and then hopefully answer it. If labels get a 360 deal taking so much, let's stop right there. If your manager lets the label take so much, fire him or don't sign the deal. If the label has a 360 deal and they're getting 5% and 10% after net, and all of a sudden those big numbers don't wind up to be so much. After net, after you've paid everyone and you bear it, it doesn't wind up as a big amount of money. It's all in the wording. We get caught up in, it's a 360 deal, they're raping me.
Devil's in the detail.
Yeah, it's really a lot of devil is in the detail.
I got a question.
Yes.
If the issue is risk, and that's why they make the 360 deal, once their risk is gone, why wouldn't they give it back? Why are they still in your touring bus? You know,
For the upside. You
Well,
know,
the upside
no,
is
but they
they're
have
in
the upside
business-
on the record.
They're in
They've got
Yeah,
it
but their
business to
argument
make
would
money.
be that they lost money on the 9 other artists, so they need the
Right.
upside from you to pay
That's
for
what
it.
I wanted you to say. Your great artist is paying for their shitty roster and their stupid
Absolutely.
methodology.
And that no, but I think that is fair, assuming they are executing on their business well. If they have a 1 in 10 hit ratio and anybody competent could have a 3 in 10, then maybe that's a valid argument. But on some level, I do think, look, not every artist is going to succeed, and you need to be able to amortize your losses on developing artists that didn't break from the profits you make from others. It's about a balance.
See, I think that, well, okay, in the 50s and 60s, the record companies were 360s. Okay? When Elvis, they put Elvis out, RCA put the tour out, put the money up for the tour, did all that stuff. Okay? For some reason, it went after every lawyer decided that that was not going to be good, but that they were making so much money, they started beating them down and beating them down until all of a sudden all they had was this 8-track that they could sell, okay? But if you were going to go into business, if you walked into a bank or you went to somebody and called them up and said, listen, I got the best fucking hot dog in the world, okay? I'm going to bring it out. I would need to have $100,000, $150,000 to start this. What would he say? Well, you know, I only want to get paid on the pickle. Okay, you can make all the money, okay, but all the pickles you sell, okay, I'm going to get the pickle. That's not going to happen. They're going to say, we want minimum for money, half.
But they already own the asset. They're taking the copyrights.
Well, you could go to publishing, which is the worst deal in the entire world to do.
Interest-free, non-recourse loan against money they see in the pipeline and will own 25%.
Here's the money for your house. You pay it back, and I still own your house.
Which is illegal in some places like France, for example.
Yeah.
One of the things they got right.
But I mean, to be honest with you, if somebody will actually do something, a partner, whether you call it 360 or not, we're 360, and they don't mind, well, they do mind paying me, but not that much.
I'm not 360. I manage artists and put out their records if they don't want me to be their manager, I only have their record. I just scale it down
Right.
to a level that makes business sense. The labels don't want it to be at that level, or there'd be tons of competition and artists who had to do the work that I was talking about. So they bring it way up here, and everyone wants this big, massive hit and want to sell 10 million records when there's only 6 of them a year. It's a moronic, old, antiquated, stupid system that gives us shitty content on the radio, which is why radio ratings are in the toilet. It's why one single can be on a CD and no one buys it because they can go to iTunes. It's just crazy.
One thing I think, I agree with you, and one thing I think that is worth mentioning is the way that we structured Metric is we, over 2 years terminated all their deals, and I set them up with their own company, and they signed a deal with themselves. So they own a company that owns their masters and their publishing and their touring and their merchandising. And then we've gone out and either licensed or done enhanced distribution deals or solicited investment. But it's always in an entity that they own and control, which owns their copyrights and their assets. So they're essentially in a 360-degree deal with themselves. And then you can go out and make deals that are either 360 or revenue center by revenue center. But at the end of the day, the artist always, 1, maintains control, and 2, maintains ownership over their creative output, which I think is what most artists want more than anything else, right?
And what you're doing as a manager is you're pointing out that if you're going to go in business as an artist, I'll help you do that. And you're giving them the choice. Motley Crue had that choice. They have their masters. They own everything. And they decide who they want to work with, when they want to work with them, and how much they're going to give them. It's turning the tables because you know your content is strong. That's the only thing I'm saying. Whether people want to make 360 deals or not isn't the issue for me. If they do, fantastic. But the lawyer, the business manager, the manager have an obligation to tell the artist there are other ways to do this, not just say, oh, this is the only way to go. No one would do that in any other business except our business.
No, I have a publishing company, and I talk my artists out of selling their publishing regardless. But if they're going to sell their publishing,
Might as well buy it.
then I might as well buy it.
I agree.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, in a competitive, whatever the competitive price is, but I might as well do it myself because it's all part of the family kind of thing. But I talk them out of it every time I can. I say, just don't do it. Go get a job doing something. Do something, but don't sell your publishing.
Agreed. We have time for one last question, and Ash, I'll direct it at you because they're basically, the person asking the question is saying they're noticing that the majority of top 40 artists are continuing to incorporate elements of electronic dance music into their hits. Do you see that as a threat to the electronic scene or as a boon?
No, I don't see it as a threat. I think it's a hot sound, and I mean, it's like with any genre that becomes hot, it gets kind of married into a lot of other genres. People try to develop it. People try to bring in elements to freshen, old genres or old sounds and make new tracks. I don't think that that's a threat at all. I think it's the complete opposite. As to the question if it's a demise of the genre, I don't think anyone is forced to create top 40 tracks just because of that being a hot sound right now. Everybody can stay true to their own artistry regardless. So.
Agreed. Well, that's all the time that we have, so thank you guys very much. I hope you guys found it interesting.